Hey, I'm Geeky Pastimes, and this is a spoiler chat about the first two episodes of Wandavision. Now, if you haven't watched the first two episodes of Wandavision, please go away and watch them and then come back here, because I'm going to talk about things that I thought were cool in them, things that were sort of mysteries, some of my ideas about some of them, all of that kind of stuff. So go watch those episodes, then come back and watch this video. As always, if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to talk more about WandaVision, obviously leave stuff in the comments below, but also come check out my stream on Twitch where I'm Geeky Pastimes, so twitch.tv/Geeky Pastimes, where no doubt we'll be talking about this a little bit later on today. So, I've just watched the first two episodes of WandaVision. I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of knew that it was going for this sort of comedy 50s, 60s sitcom type thing. I knew it had, the original cast, the same people playing Scarlet Witch and Vision. And I really didn't know, how good it was going to be or how much I was going to enjoy it. I didn't know what Disney were doing with it, whether they were trying to propel the MCU universe forwards or whether this was just some kind of, fun side thing for Disney+. Turns out seems like it's going to be a whole lot more important than maybe I expected, and it's so much better than I expected. I had no expectations to make a video about this or anything like that, but I just sort of, as soon as I finished watching it, I was like, I want to talk to people about this. I want to have some sort of conversation about it because I thought it was so much fun. It seems really, really good so far. So, just for anyone who sort of wants a quick sort of recap, maybe in case you're watching this months down the line and you're like, oh yeah, WandaVision, what was that? WandaVision's like a 50s, 60s sitcom, obviously. That's what they've gone for, at least with the first couple of episodes, is it's kind of set up in the same kind of ways, things like I Love Lucy, that kind of thing, maybe a bit of Bewitched, things like that. And I'm really impressed with how well they've captured that element of it. It's genuinely funny. There's a lot of jokes which are obviously meant to be a kind of parody of the sort of jokes they'd have then, but they've done it in a really kind of wholesome, funny way where they sort of, I feel like they've avoided some of the more problematic things and they've kind of made jabs at that while actually making something where the jokes still work. They are genuine jokes. They're not just when you had that spate of spoof films after Scary Movie, and loads of them were making fun of jokes in much better films, and the jokes themselves weren't actually funny. It was just a reference, essentially. This doesn't do that. It's almost like an homage to some of those TV shows and some of the brilliance of bits of those TV shows and the good writing in them and the good acting. And it does it incredibly well. The other thing they've done really well is the special effects. There's a lot of special effects, especially in the second episode. And rather than kind of going what I would say, maybe is the easier route of doing it all, CGI and everything. Obviously, MCU is set up for that. Instead, they've kind of gone for things that look kind of like the things that you'd see on stuff like Bewitched. They've kind of, there's a bit where Vision's chewing gum, or he swallows it, and then rather than doing some sort of 3D thing, they've gone for a 2D drawing, almost like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, to show what happens to him inside, which I think is really, really cool, and they come back to it a few times. And there's a lot of kind of obviously cut footage where things appear or disappear, and it's always got that kind of, it's always slightly misaligned, so you can see people kind of move a little bit in between the frozen bit. And it just gives it that kind of really authentic feel, while also still, being fun to watch. It's not immersion breaking at all. And I think it's really, really good. And it's one thing that I hadn't really thought about, that they can do special effects in this, with what happens at the end of the second episode, which we'll talk about in a bit, with the bees. But they can do special effects like that I assume will CGI, but in black and white and in that kind of same style as what it was back then. And that's something I don't think I've seen before. Someone using modern special effects but trying to make the film look like it did back then, or the TV show look like it did back then. I think that's really, really clever. The other thing to say about it is it's got incredibly good acting. Obviously the main cast are amazing, and they were in the Avengers films and are really good in this. But the entire supporting cast as well. I just think everyone's been cast so well. Everyone seems to be really giving it all. No one's phoning it in or anything. This is definitely taken completely as seriously as any of the films were. And it's just sort of makes for a much better show that everybody's doing their best and everyone's really entertaining to watch. There hasn't been a single character so far where I've been oh, they're a bit boring. All of them are really entertaining and all of them are incredibly well acted. I just think this show is something really, really special. This is one of those shows where even just after the first 2 episodes, I'm like, this is going to be something that people have on their lists of, the top shows of 2021. In the same sort of way as I felt about The Mandalorian when I first started watching it. Like, this has given me really high hopes for what Disney Plus are doing with everything else they're working on, because it's just awesome. Anyway, getting on to the mysteries, getting on to the things that were kind of things that I noticed, things that were sort of shown, a bit in our face. I feel like I've seen, bear in mind I've only just finished watching them for the first time, I feel like I've seen things that were quite obvious that everyone would have noticed. And I'm wondering how much hidden stuff there is beyond that. There's a lot of things where I notice numbers, like the house number is 2600. Is that a reference to something? There's lots of like little things in the background where I'm starting to think like maybe there's some significance, but we might have to watch more episodes to catch that. Or people who are like massively into Marvel might be able to catch some of those things a bit better. Because just to make it very clear, I'm not like, I haven't read loads of comic books, I've read some of them, I've not watched the films a million times. Like, I'm much more making this video as somebody who's hyped for it and engaged with the mysteries and enjoying it. I'm not pretending I've got the answers to these. Like, I've got no idea. I'm just enjoying the ride. So in the first episode, the first thing that really stood out to me is kind of like, oh, that's different, was the toaster advert. So there's this toaster advert, which kind of, they've done in both episodes now, had a kind of advert in the very middle of the episode, almost where you'd normally have a commercial break. And they had this toaster, and the toaster was made by Stark Industries, which even makes sense, in universe, because Stark Industries was a thing. But it has the red light that starts flashing. So when the toaster is kind of done, it has this red light that gets more and more intense. And my wife actually pointed out that the whole toaster looks like a face. It almost looks a bit like Vision's face, with the red light being where the Mind Stone would have been. Which is kind of interesting. And I feel like what's happening in a lot of these, with a lot of these mysteries, is there's something going on with maybe like the real world seeping through, or their memories of things seeping through, or people trying to send messages to sort of remind them of the real world. And I think that was quite a nice kind of vaguely subtle one until the red light comes out, and because the whole thing's been in black and white up to that point, you suddenly get this sort of splash of colour that this is something different, this is something really interesting. And then you've also got the kind of their forgetfulness. So the fact that like when they were at dinner, they were constantly sort of like unable to answer questions. And I got the sense at the beginning that it was like, oh, they didn't want to answer questions. But then you get the real look of sort of panic on their faces when they realize that they actually don't know anything about their past. They can't remember how they got there. And this is kind of a really common feeling when you're in a dream, isn't it? Like when you're in a dream, you can't remember how you got to places, or the sort of what came before. And that's kind of one of the things that sometimes makes you go, oh, I'm dreaming, this isn't real. And that seems to be kind of what's happening to them. So there's something going on where, like, are they in a simulation, which seems very likely? Are they somehow trapped within Vision's head or something? Like, I've got no idea what's going on. And then towards the end of that episode, we found out that the whole thing is some sort of TV show simulation, and it's being run by Sword. So you've seen the logo on a lot of uniforms and like the things in the background stuff, which is this Sword logo. Now, Sword is something, as far as I know, hasn't been in the MCU yet. But Sword is something that's in the comics, and it's kind of like, if you think S.H.I.E.L.D. is like the Earth-based version, of like heroes protecting the Earth, then Sword is the space-based version of it, for the one for other planets or other dimensions and things like that. So the Sentient World Observation and Response Department. So that seems like that's maybe like a hint of, are they going to be a big player in the Phase 4 of the MCU, or is it going to be something where they're just going to be in this show as sort of like something completely unusual? Are they using Vision and Wanda for something? It's kind of interesting. And it's interesting how they're set up in this as being something quite sinister rather than something benevolent, which I think is kind of interesting. It's hard to tell. I think like maybe we're going to head towards finding out this is less of a prison and more of like a treatment for them. Maybe they're trying to rebuild Vision in some way. But I think it's interesting that Sword definitely seem to be, the sort of prison guards of this whole thing, rather than being someone who's trying to help them. Now, going on to the second episode, which I thought was even better. Like, I mean, I love both of these, but I thought it was even better. Obviously, one of the constant things throughout this was the banging sound. So this sort of banging sound outside. And at the beginning, there's sort of a joke about it just ending up being a tree. But then as we find out throughout the episode, it actually carries on during the day, and it turns out to be like something is happening when that banging sound happens, and I kind of hope that's a motif that they keep on all the way through, that when you hear that banging sound, that means there's some sort of intrusion into this world or into this simulation. So in early on in the episode, we saw Wanda find the Stark helicopter, and it's this sort of toy helicopter. I thought it was a drone at first, but apparently, yeah, then when she picks it up, you see it's like a toy helicopter, and it's got the Iron Man colors. So is that somebody trying to like remind her of Iron Man, or sort of something that would, be really, really clear? I wonder if we're going to get similar things for like Captain America and stuff like that. But that is also the second time we've seen Stark Industries mentioned in it. And obviously Stark is a massive deal to Vision. It's interesting that it's kind of been Wanda, the sort of Stark Industries thing, and not anything to do with Vision. And it does seem to be like Wanda's the one who's seeing the frayed edges of this simulation, whereas Vision isn't. And I wonder why that is. Again, that maybe makes me think that this is something that's going on inside Vision, or inside Vision's like programming or his AI. And then we had this radio freaking out. So when she was speaking at the sort of planning meeting, there was a radio started freaking out, and you could start hearing through it the radio saying, "Wanda, can you hear me?" So there was some voice coming through saying, "Wanda, can you hear me?" And that makes me think, Wanda's in some sort of coma, Wanda's in some sort of like dreamlike state, and there's people trying to contact her. And there's like someone trying to get in touch with her, clearly, which is kind of interesting. And I assume it's Sword. Like, I assume it's someone from Sword is trying to break through to her. But then it seems weird at the end of the first episode, they were just monitoring her. Very strange. Anyway, and then the penultimate thing, the thing that was like obviously the big cliffhanger mystery at the end, was the Beekeeper coming out of the sewers. So the Beekeeper coming out of that drain and out of the manhole cover, and then seeming to turn around and look at her. I thought, and I don't know this for sure, I thought this looked a little bit like it could be Vision. Like, the face is obviously obscured, so it's going to be someone that we would recognize when we find out who it is. But I kind of thought it was Vision, so maybe Vision from another universe or another dimension. Like, we've obviously already seen in the Avengers the idea of being able to go and remove things from other dimensions of universes. Like, maybe this is another Vision. Maybe it's a Vision, before he lost the Mind Stone, something like that. I think that's a really interesting idea. And then when she looked at him, she seemed to recognize it as well, because she immediately said no. And it's like, was it because she recognized the person, or was it just because it was a threat, something she didn't want? And then she rewound time, and then it didn't happen the second time. Like, when they went through it again, it didn't happen at all. And that was really strange. So like, she seems to be able to shape this reality, and she seems to have maybe more of an idea of what's going on than we thought. And maybe she's keeping herself here. So my thoughts are maybe that whatever this simulation is, whatever the system is, maybe Wanda entered into it willingly, in order to save Vision or reconstruct Vision or do something to help Vision. And it's messing with her mind, but she's aware that she wants to preserve it. Like, she wants to keep it. Like, this is something she wants. So while like the frayed edges, sort of, the way people are intruding into simulation, they're trying to help her get out of it. She's being quite stubborn and wanting to sort of stay with it, maybe to try and save Vision, which I think is a really interesting idea. Obviously, this is just, my thoughts after watching it the first time, and I'd be really interested to see what other people's thoughts on it are, what other people's kind of theories are about what's really going on. And then at the end, we had this sort of like the colour appearing, which I loved. I thought it was a really cool effect of the colour on Vision's face coming back, and then slowly the world filling with colour. And it looks like maybe we're moving on to another decade of sitcoms, that we're sort of moving through. So we've gone through the black and white ones, and now we're going to go on to the early colour ones, which again is like a really, really cool idea. And it means that they can sort of change up the humour a little bit. I'm assuming we'll keep the same cast, but maybe they'll be playing slightly different characters as they would be in the slightly different decades of sitcoms. And I think it's awesome. Like, speaking also, I think it's quite interesting. Like, speaking as someone who, I grew up watching things like Bewitched, but I didn't grow up watching I Love Lucy. I didn't watch that till I was at university and sort of studied a bit of it for a while. I'd be really curious to see a perspective from someone who actually grew up in America watching those sitcoms. How authentic they feel it is, and how well they're doing a good job of, like I said, this sort of, people have said this word parody a few times. I feel like it's more of an homage than anything. It seems to have a lot of respect for those kind of shows. But anyway, that's all I've got to say so far. Like I said, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. If I've missed stuff, if I've missed really cool references, please do put them down below. Oh, I didn't even talk about the Hydra symbol. So we saw the Hydra symbol as well on another product. So that's obviously an idea that, you know, Hydra is in this as well as Stark Industries, again, sort of makes sense time-wise. But yeah, we've had a nod to Hydra as well, so there's something about them going on. But like I said, if there's more stuff I've missed, please leave it in the comments. I just want to talk about this stuff. I'm not positioning myself as an expert on it at all. I just love discussing this stuff, talking about this stuff. On the Discord, I've opened up a sort of like spoiler channel for it. It's not going to be, I don't want leaks or anything like that. I'm not interested in anything like that. Like, I'm not interested in someone being like, oh, I saw this photo from the set. I just want to talk about what we've seen in these episodes. I might do a sort of special stream where we do just chatting and we just talk about this, because I think it's a really, really fun thing to do. I tweeted out this earlier, but I haven't really felt like this since kind of Westworld, of having a TV show that's built around mysteries and built around, you know, oh, I can't wait to find out what happens next week, and where everyone can have theories about it. Lost was like that as well at the beginning. You know, when I was at university, Lost came out. And it was so fun, all of us meeting up every week to watch an episode, then talking about what we thought was going to happen and what everything means. I'm loving having something like this on TV again. Like, this is a lot of fun. So if you enjoyed this video, this is a new thing for me. I don't normally talk about TV very much, but if you do like it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave me a message below. Let me know if you liked it. Share this on Twitter. You know, that sort of stuff helps me out a bunch. Like I said, if you want to follow me on Twitch, I'm Geeky Pastimes over on Twitch. I'll probably do some just chatting streams where we talk about this kind of stuff. And I'll see you soon, probably next week, when we see the next episode. Goodbye.